All right, welcome back to Steeler Country. As I said in my last video, my review of the 53-man roster, that was the initial 53-man roster. Felt like some more moves were to come, and those moves have just happened as the Steelers have made 6 roster transactions, adding 3 players to the injured reserve list and signing back 3 players who were cut yesterday by the team. Let's go over those moves individually. We'll start here, and I've added, you see the spreadsheet I have here, I've added a column down here, the injured reserve list. You can see Stephon Tuitt was added to that list. Now look, Tuitt, he had a tragedy in his family this offseason with the death of his brother in a hit and run, and he's clearly been dealing with that all offseason. It's contributed to the fact that he hasn't practiced or played in preseason games thus far, and obviously prayers go out to him and his entire family. Can't imagine what he's going through at this time. It does seem like, though, that the reason why he's on injured reserve right now is about a lingering knee issue that he also has. And so this will keep him out for the first 3 weeks, at least for the first 3 weeks of the regular season. So he'll miss that game coming up in about, 10 or 11 days now against the Buffalo Bills. In his place, as I talked about in the last video, the Steelers do have a very good defensive line room right now. But there's just going to be a drop-off from Stephon Tuitt. Tuitt was terrific last year. I mean, and really, where the Steelers are really going to miss Stephon Tuitt is that as a pass rusher, right? That interior pass rusher, where he was spectacular a season ago. Not to say he was a bad run defender. I think he is, he is a plus in the run defense as well. But you just cannot replace a guy like Stephon Tuitt last year. He had 12 sacks last year, and like 70 pressures. Those numbers coming from Pro Football Focus and their charting. Boy, oh boy. I mean, the Steelers, I like what Chris Wormley has done this preseason, and I think guys like Buggs and Davis have improved year over year, but you're not going to replace that. You're not going to replace Stephon Tuitt and what he brings as a pass rusher with Chris Wormley, Isaiah Buggs, and Carlos Davis. Now, look, I think as a run defender, I like what Wormley brings to the table. I think the Steelers can be okay from a run defense, but they are really going to need they're going to need some guys like Hayward to step up from the interior. And then, of course, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Melvin Ingram, the usual suspects there. And even Devin Bush is a pass rusher now that this team has lost Vince Williams, who was so good from the inside linebacker position. They're going to need to step their game up in this one. And it's a tough position to put the Steelers in because, TJ Watt hasn't practiced yet because of that contract situation. So not great early on. I mean, this is a bad sign for the Steelers early on in the year to lose Tuitt for at least 3 weeks, and we'll see how much longer that can go. Knee injuries can linger for quite a while. He hasn't practiced or played in a single preseason game throughout the entire process. So, wish Tuitt speedy recovery, and also prayers to him and his family. Obviously, the tragedy this offseason. The other move the Steelers making is to put Zach Banner on injured reserve. As I talked about in that last video, coming back from ACL surgery, were the Steelers just taking it slow with him, or was that kind of a lingering issue that was going to go into the regular season? Seems like yes. Seems like this is something to deal with that knee and coming back from ACL surgery. It's obviously that rehab has not gone as quickly as anticipated. He did injure that knee in the first game of last season, so we're just coming up on a year since that injury occurred, but he's not ready to go just yet. He, again, just like Tuitt, he will miss at least the first 3 games of the regular season. And I understand that any kind of negative news when it comes to the offensive line is just alarm bells in Pittsburgh right now. Oh my goodness, what are the Steelers going to do on the offensive line? Look, I do think that there's as much as it hurts to see Zach Banner, a player who Mike Tomlin said at the beginning of this entire process, he told Zach Banner, "You're my answer at tackle, so get yourself ready to go." The Steelers were putting some eggs in that basket. They gave him a $2 year, $9 million deal this offseason. They were putting some eggs in the Zach Banner basket, and it certainly hurts to lose him. But there is a silver lining here for me, and that is the fact that Dan Moore Jr. is going to start. And if there's one thing I've been consistent on for pretty much this entire preseason, it is that Dan Moore has earned a spot to be a starting tackle on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I understand that he doesn't have the pedigree of some of the bigger names in this draft class. Okay, this is not a guy who was picked on day 1 or day 2. Yeah, he's a day 3 pick. He's a 4th round pick. But all this kid has gone out and done at the left tackle position is play above the line football every time the Steelers gave him the opportunity to. Okay, and the process started slowly for him back in OTAs and minicamp. But when he got to training camp, he looked like a different guy. And in preseason, he looked like the kind of player, even as a young rookie tackle, the kind of player who should be playing early on in his career, and certainly looked far better as a left tackle than did Chuks Okorafor. Okay, Okorafor was a disaster, was a borderline disaster last year at right tackle, and was looking to be an absolute disaster at the left tackle position throughout the preseason. Dan Moore so far has looked far better than that. And he has earned a spot to be a starter on this roster. I know Tomlin and Adrian Clem and Matt Canada weren't ready to make that proclamation just yet. They were ready for Chuks to start if Zach Banner had been healthy. But that's why I say there's a little silver lining in this, because it feels to me like Chuks Okorafor is giving up that left tackle spot to Dan Moore so he can go to the right tackle, but he's never getting it back. I mean, in my opinion, I think Dan Moore is going to play above the line football even as we get into the regular season, and Dan Moore will be your left tackle of the future. The Steelers got that guy in the 4th round. I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Dan Moore thus far. Now, it does mean that Chuks is going to go back to the right side. You kind of know what you're going to get out of Chuks on the right side, which is neither a great pass blocker and nor a dominant run blocker as well. And that's a big problem because, that right tackle, you need him to be a good run blocker. And Chuks, we know, is not that whatsoever. I mean, he just does not have that. And we talk about this team wanting to impose their will, be more physical at the point of attack. That's never been Chuks. And so, yes, that is an issue. But, for me, the issue has always been Chuks. Whether it's Chuks on the right side, Chuks on the left side, Chuks was the issue at tackle. And so spinning that over to where now Chuks is going to be the right tackle, again, for me, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I'm just happy that Dan Moore is going to get a chance to start. I do want to mention on the offensive line, the Steelers did re-sign both B.J. Finney and Rashad Coward. So both those players are back on. Both of them more interior players. I thought the Steelers might look at more of a tackle, a guy who could play both guard and tackle. They have not done that yet. I guess there's still the possibility that more moves will come, but Rashad Coward right now and B.J. Finney round out the 10 offensive linemen on the Steelers. Excuse me, the 9 offensive linemen on the Steelers list. Zach Banner coming off. And then you've got Anthony McFarland going to IR. A surprising one. Now, I guess, he is dealing with an injury. I didn't think it would be enough to put him on the IR list, which will, much like Zach Banner and Tuitt, keep him out the first 3 weeks of the season. And this is likely why Benny Snell is a member of this football team. And it'll be very interesting as we get into the regular season and McFarland's healthy. Does Benny Snell fall off? I'll be interested to see that. And Benny Snell's going to have an opportunity during the regular season now to prove himself and prove that he still deserves a spot on this roster when McFarland gets healthy. But it does seem like that's, Benny Snell, yes, he provides special teams, but the Steelers didn't intend to keep 5 here long-term at the running back spot. They intended to keep 4 because they knew McFarland was going to IR. That makes a lot of sense. You do feel like once McFarland gets healthy, something's got to give there when it comes to Harris, Balaj, Snell, Watt, McFarland. It feels like between Snell and McFarland, one of those two guys is not likely to make it, and I think that player long-term will be Benny Snell. And then the Steelers brought back Arthur Maulet. So as we talked about in that last video, the Steelers were very likely going to have to bring in a 5th cornerback onto this roster. They have done that now by bringing back Arthur Maulet, who was a nickel corner throughout this process. He had an injury. It seems like that's cleared up for him now. He made it through, the whole waiver process and not signing to another team's practice squad because the Steelers likely told him, hey, we're bringing you back here. Don't go signing somewhere else. So he's back on the 53, and that does kind of round out the room. Now you have Joe Hayden, Cam Sutton as your outside corners, and Maulet could be the slot corner, but I just wonder, you're bringing him back because you needed a guy who could play slot corner, but I don't know that Maulet has done enough in the preseason or even in training camp to say that he should be the full-time slot corner over a guy like Cam Sutton and then moving James Pierre in. As I talked about in that last video, it's going to come down to the Steelers' comfort level with moving Cam Sutton inside, outside in those situations, and whether or not they're willing to do that with him. Because I do think right now when we talk about that nickel package, Hayden and Pierre on the outside, Sutton on the inside does seem to be the best 3 you can go with. But if they don't feel comfortable with the idea that Sutton's going to have to go inside outside, then Maulet, kind of by default, is your nickel or your slot corner in those situations. And you do have, by the way, Trey Norwood on the roster as well. As I talked about in that last video, he got a chance to play some slot corner. The coaches rave about him and how smart he is and how well positioned he is to go from position to position like that. He is a free safety technically on the roster, but he can be a slot corner in a pinch. So there you have it. This is, again, I still wouldn't call this the final 53-man roster, but we're getting there. We're getting a little closer now. I think we now kind of have a sense of, what these rooms are going to look like. Certainly, I think on the offensive line, now they've added Coward and Finney back in, you kind of solidify, where everyone's going to be. Haig is your swing tackle. On that defensive line, it makes more sense now that they kept 8 because they knew Tuitt was going to IR. I guess if I had one criticism right now of the 53, looking it over today, the fact that they haven't made a move yet with Marcus Allen, and I thought he might be one to go to IR. Why did they keep Ulysses Gilbert over Quincy Roche? Because if you haven't heard, Quincy Roche was claimed on waivers by the New York Giants. So he is now a member of the New York Giants. They kept Ulysses Gilbert over Quincy Roche. That is a strange one. As I said in that last video, I thought in a bad linebacker room, Ulysses Gilbert was the worst of the 6, and yet he makes the roster. Whereas I thought Quincy Roche put some tape out there that lets you know, like, this kid, if you just develop him over time, this kid could become something here, at the very least, a spot pass rusher. And I think that's what the New York Giants saw. I don't want to cry over this one because, as we've seen in the past, right, we get all worked up about guys like Tuzar Skipper not making the roster, and Tuzar Skipper has done exactly nothing in the National Football League to this point. He was another guy actually claimed by the New York Giants. So again, I don't want to make a huge deal about that, but the fact that this team is keeping a guy in Gilbert who we've seen in the past have both injury concerns and just concerns out there on the field itself, a guy we kind of know about at this point, rather than keeping a guy like Roche who has, I think, a ton more upside than Gilbert. It's a little strange to me, but that's really, to me, as I look at the construction of this roster overall now, that's probably the only true concern I have. I understand the concerns at tackle. Those concerns for me have been there going all the way back to when this team, said before the draft that they are going to move Okorafor to the left side and he will be the starting tackle. That to me has always been an issue. Okorafor, as he proved last season, is not a starting tackle in this league. He moves back to right tackle now. It's not going to make him any better. It's not going to make him any worse, right? He is who he is. The Steelers need an upgrade at that spot. The hope has to be now, if you're a Steeler fan today, the hope is that Dan Moore, as I said, continues to play well and takes that spot away from Okorafor long term. And that when Zach Banner comes back, and hopefully he can come back mid-season and be healthy enough to take over that right tackle spot for Okorafor, and then Okorafor is just a backup at that point. That's got to be the hope. That's kind of best case scenario for the Steelers right now. But all right, that'll do it again for my thoughts on the new 53-man roster as it exists right now. Thank you all for watching. Please like the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I'll be back soon with more Steeler Country.